Hello, dear chess lovers. It's white to play in this position. How would you play with the white pieces? Does this position look somehow similar to you? Does maybe recall some patterns, some attacking motifs in chess? Folks, today we are talking about Greco, maybe the first chess professional who lived in Italy in early 1600s. I'm reading recently, again, this book called On the Origin of Good Moves by Willy Hendriks. He wants to track the origin of some ideas in chess and really identify some very strong ideas that was already present in Greco's time. Because we have some misconceptions when it comes to the foundations of good positional chess. We usually say it all starts from Steinitz, and earlier masters were mostly petzers, right? Just pieces flying and back and forth and no understanding of positional chess and so on. He challenges those ideas in this book by showing some very instructive Greco examples. He thinks it's like Plato. When you look at Greco's games, like all the good ideas were already present in his games. That's a very bold and provocative claim. So we will investigate in today's episode some of Greco's games to see whether Hendriks is right, to see whether we can track some foundational understanding of chess and good positional chess already present in Greco's games. So Greco lived early 1600s, folks, and we can place him in between Ruy Lopez and Philidor. Ruy Lopez was 1500s, Philidor was 1700s, and Greco lives in between these two eras. He sort of represents Italian school of chess in general. But he was a real chess professional. He learned his living from chess. He first played in Italy, then he moved to France and London, and he beat all the strong players in Europe. That's how he sort of earned his living, and he was selling his manuscripts to his patrons. What signifies Greco is also, for the first time, we see the entire games being recorded. Greco, after his death, his manuscript was published because he was writing those games, either actual games or his vision for some imaginary games, and he was selling those manuscripts to his patrons in Italy. But only after his death, the transcripts were collected, was published in a single book. Okay? Because if you look at, for example, Philidor times, you don't see so many full games actually. That's surprising. So 100 years before Philidor, Greco was already giving us full games. This position, folks, going back to this position. You're a great player if you found the move bishop takes h7. This is called the Greek gift sacrifice. It carries Greco's game. By the way, some people think that he has Greek origins. He was living in some part of Italy that had lots of Greek immigrants. So it's not 100% sure, but he might have some Greek origins. That's why his name is Greco, more or less. People used to call him Greco, okay? And this is still carried over to today's. The Greek gift sacrifice, when there's a pawn on e5, when there's no knight f6 possibility, when the bishop is eyeing that h7 point, which is only guarded by the king, when there's already a pawn on h4, the Greek gift sacrifice becomes a very typical motif. And Greco was the first person in his game against not known person, NN, right? That was showing us this idea. King takes, followed by knight g5, of course, right? If you take my knight, then I will open up the h file, and my rook and queen joins the attack. And that's exactly how the game went, by the way. Bishop takes g5, h takes g5, king g6. There are many ways for white to finish off the game. Queen h5 check, of course, is very typical. King f5. And already here, you can stop the video and find the mate in 2. Greco find the mate in 3 from this position, so can you please do better than him? You're a great player if you found the move queen h3 check, and this forces mate in 2, either with this or after queen h3 check. If you go king e4, comes queen d3 mate. But can we really blame Greco that he went for mate in 3? He did queen h7 check, g6, queen h3 check, forcing king e4, and he ended the game with queen d3 mate. But a beautiful, lovely finish. Well, after bishop takes h7 sacrifice, folks, king takes h7, knight g5. If they go to g6 with the king, sometimes this actually succeeds, the defensive side. Here, with so many sleeping pieces for black, it doesn't work. Queen d3 check is very typical, forcing f5. But en passant rule exists at that time as well. King f6, queen f3. There are many ways for white to finish this game, but this is the most convincing, very forcing. Now we also see the point of early h4. That is h5 check becomes an option. King h6. Now we see the potential discoveries. But this queen d3 move is actually very nice, forcing, well, basically threatening mate in one, like this, and also forcing such moves on the next turn. So basically black is no defense, right? Queen f5, knight takes e6 check, king h7, queen takes f5 check, king g8, knight takes d8. It's carnage. You see how it's going from here. So e5, knight d5. Greco was the first person who showed us the strength of the sacrifice, and here black has no way to defend against this. So we see the origin of this Greek gift goes all the way to Greco, but it's not only tactical themes. I will also show you in this video so many nice positional themes that was first introduced by Greco. Now, I will show you 3 games played by Greco against NN that really shows strategic depth, understanding of the center and flank connection, understanding of the mobile pawn center, and understanding of how to organize an attack and coordinate our pieces to mate the opponent's king. This was really mature understanding that was taking shape by Greco. Also shows us why he was the strongest player in the world at his time. This is around 1620, folks. Greco with white pieces, and the black player is choosing is this very hyper modern looking double bishop fianchetto system, and Greco is playing very classical chess, right? He's just taking over the center. He says, if you give me the center, I will use it with all my pawns. You see, it's already very visible. The advantage of the central pawn majority and the mobile pawn center, they will restrict the black pieces. This is not a sound structure for black at all, because as those pawns are rolling, they will drive the minor pieces backwards. But Greco takes his time. He just develops his army very naturally. And here comes e5, right? That's the point. Mobile pawn center rolls, taking more space and burying the enemy minor pieces. And once you are so strategically sort of dominating the center of the board, you get a green light to attack the king side, right? You get a green light to attack on the flanks. So, can you tell me which move Greco chose in this position with the white pieces, folks? Yes, he went for g4, organizing a pawn storm with h4, h5 on the king side. Ancient prefers h4, but I'm sure Greco wasn't happy after the move h5. But even this, right? Knight g5, knight e7, some d5s, and white is always going to be better in those positions with some g4s and to activate the queen, open up lines, right? But he goes g4, he says, once you give me this full domination in center, I will attack you on the flanks. Yes, the bishop is becoming happier after g4, but there is no easy way for black to exploit that. Now, black should have played knight b4 here, by the way, folks, but they played the move d5. They want to create some central counterplay, and after c takes d5, black went wrong in this position. And again, chess crimes are visible for Greco's opponents. Very instructive mistakes. That also makes these games very, very interesting. So in this position, would you go e takes d5 or knight b4, folks? I will give you 2 choices as black. Which one is the right way to fight when they're attacking you on the flanks? Yes, folks, knight b4. Center should be opened as much as possible, right? The central structure is fluid. Black wants to get some central counterplay against white's invasion on the king side. Knight b4 is the only way for black to fight, but NN amateur went e takes d5. What a beautiful chess crime this is, because they are locking the center and they are burying their bishop on b7. There is zero counterplay left for black in the center of the board, and center is stabilized, and Greco says, thank you so much. He says, thank you so much for the chess crime, and now h4, h5 is coming. You see, the attack is raging on the flanks. This is a beautiful connection between center and flank. If black goes knight b4 here, yes, well, there is so much tension in the center of the board. White's attack on the king side will be disturbed, right? They will be diverted if they play the move knight b4. So this game is already very interesting to show us the center and flank connection. You see how Greco is playing? Like h4, h5, Harry meets Gary. It's not like coffee house Patzer chess. There's some sound strategic backup to the entire middle game plan. And this is the main point of Willy Hendriks in his book. He says, we see so many sound ideas originated not in Steinitz time, not in Philidor's time, but already in Greco's time. That's the provocative claim by Hendriks, right? HE, again, how do you mate the black king? Yes, Greco simply wants to form a battery on the h file, right? The queen is coming to h2, and given the central domination, black has terrible pieces, and black cannot resist. Queen h2, they took on c3, and Greco mate the black king. Beautiful mate. If you don't take my knight, if you play the move f5, this is still a disastrous position for black, because after gf, everything is collapsing. I can show you how the game could have ended, guys. Queen g5 check. Well, king d7 is answered by bishop f5, and you have to sacrifice the exchange, but it doesn't even end there, right? The king is never going to be safe, and my pieces are just raging. Knight g5, rook h7. This game is completely over in this case, right? So after queen h2, in fact, black has no defense. See how Greco won the game? Simply by dominating the center, gaining all the space, and then once the center was stabilized by the opponent, then he played h4, h5, opened up, and mate. This looks like a modern game, right? At first sight. How come this game was played in 1620? And that's the surprising part that shows us Greco's strength. Still, we're not 100% sure whether that's from a real game or whether it was a construction. But either way, Greco was showing us some true understanding of those very powerful middle game plans. Now, guys, I will show you a beautiful game. Greco with white pieces against NN that shows us the true power of the mobile pawn center. By the way, of course, Greco is from Italy, Italian school, and is choosing the Italian opening. We also now understand, right, why bishop c4 is called the Italian opening as white. It goes back to Greco's time already. Bishop c4. Let's look at the line bishop c5. This is still visible so many times, guys. c3, very sound and logical move to take over the center, right? We see all these moves even in modern times. Takes. Black has two choices, folks. Bishop b4 check or bishop b6. Please avoid the chess crime. There's only one move here that keeps black in the game. Now, folks, the correct move for black is bishop b4 check. Black has no time to lose. They have to enter this line. That's a very, very common line, by the way. Right here, white goes d5. This line is still seen at amateur level, club player level all the time. And white basically has good play in this position, right? Yes, white has given up a pawn, but white has good piece activity to compensate for that. And black has to be careful in playing against the setup for white. a6 is a good move, and the game goes on. Bishop b4 is the only fine move for black in this position. His opponent played the move bishop b6. That's a very instructive mistake. And you tell me why this move is such a big mistake, guys. Black, it seems like black is developing their army, right? What is wrong with black setup? They are not fighting for the center using pawns, and they are letting white mobile center to roll. Mobile pawn center, if unhindered, can cause great damage. Nimzowitsch wrote a chapter about this, but it was already Greco who first showed us the strength of the mobile pawn center. So it's white to play. Please stop the video, folks, here and tell me, how should white continue in this position? You're a great player if you found the move d5 or e5. Both moves are fine. d5 or e5 are fine. Greco find the move e5. Mobile pawn center is rolling, and once it does, the minor pieces are pushed back. And that's exactly why you cannot let the mobile pawn center unhindered like this. That's a great strategic lesson, folks. Here, knight g8 is a terrible move as well, but such an instructive beginner mistake, right? The only way for black to fight is the very typical response, d5, counter-attacking defense. That's the only way to fight in those positions, by the way, guys. Please keep this position in mind, because I'm pretty sure as beginners you will see those positions. d5 attacks the bishop, but also, right, gets this e4 square for the knight, gains some stability. But if white knows what they are doing, white will still have a good game. Here, d5 is a very good move. Mobile pawn center is rolling forward. Knight b4, queen a4 check, c6. This knight cannot be captured because of bishop a5, but white is still having a good game after this. Now the knight is really hit. After this, this comes with tempo on the rook, and the problem is the king, right? Black's main problem is the king in the center, and white has good initiative and a good position from this game, right? So, but in the actual game, knight g8 was chosen, and you see Now there's no turning back. Again, please stop the video and tell me how Greco punished those chess crimes that was played by black in this game. Yes, mobile pawn center rolls with tempo on the knight. Now the knight has to drop back, and you see black's pieces are setting up for the next game basically. And the answer is the art of burying pieces. d6, mobile pawn center keeps on rolling. Activation of the bishop, gaining of d5 square after knight moves, but burying the bishop on c8. You see, that's why mobile pawn center is a great force in chess, and Greco punished the black king like this. Very simple queen d5, and black is lacking defenders on the f7 point. The weakest square on the black king will be collapsing on the next turn after knight a6. We can remove the defender with bishop a6, and the game is completely over. It's as simple as that. Greco played this move, and after queen d2, rook g8, they resign. Yeah, after bishop f6. Look at this. The queen is also trapped on d8. I mean, this is one of the most amazing instructive games actually in all chess history. So much so that I think this game is constructed because it's such an instructive mistake, right? Although these mistakes are also happening all the time in club level, casual player, beginner level games, right? Like big mistake happens all the time for beginners. They go bishop b6 and they let those pawns roll forward unhindered. d5 was also a great move, by the way, for the sake of completeness. Knight e7 and e5 sort of transpose into what we've seen. If they go knight e4, I can even castle short in this position. And well, f2 cannot be taken because I will just take two sort of minor pieces. And if you go d6, then queen e2, look at your knight. The knight has to move, and I will take on d6 to activate my pieces. Rook e1, you can't even castle short in that position. For example, like this, we can quickly check this line, folks. Rook e1, and the knight is forever stuck in the center, and white got. White transformed the mobile pawn center into something tangible. So much so is that Nimzowitsch gave this line in his book as well, guys. Nimzowitsch won a game against a not known amateur in the My system from this very position, right? So this position is so interesting, it traces back all the way to Greco. I'm not sure whether he was referencing Greco's book, by the way, when he was giving that. I have to recheck that, by the way, that book. But this is such an instructive game that has ramifications, even for modern times when you're teaching the strength of mobile pawn center. This is your model game, and it already traces back to Greco in 1620, folks. Right? So here, black players, please remember this. Bishop b4, and now we also remember why. Right? You also now exactly know why this one must be played for black in this position. Otherwise, you get rolled by the mobile pawn center. Black has no time to lose. If white exchanges those bishops, here there's again only a single move for black to keep the advantage. Again, if you give time to white, they will roll the pawn, so there's only a single move. Yes, d5 or even knight takes e4 followed by d5. Maybe there are two solutions for black, but both solutions involve you not let those pawn center roll forward unhindered, because otherwise it's a big disaster waiting for you. And hopefully this was a good lesson to consolidate those ideas. And finally, I will finish with a beautiful game that was played by Greco with the white pieces that shows us that he also was a master when it comes to those advanced French formations and how to attack using the pawn chain, right? Advanced French was visible also in Philidor's days, right? By the way, it happened all the time. Those pawn chains, right? Philidor, pawns are souls of chess. Well, he was also a master when it comes to playing with those pawn chains, activating their pieces, burying their pieces, and so on. It's already visible, but you see, it also goes back to Greco's time. You will see what I mean by this game. So black player played the move bishop b4, check out the knight c3. French players, tell me whether this exchange is good for black or not. Yeah, that's a terrible chess crime that happened in the actual game, because black gave up their good bishop for the pinned knight on c3, which was doing nothing in this position, and now this pawn chain is giving white already a huge advantage. We'll see how Greco converted this advantage. Already he starts, right? He sees the best location for the bishop on f1. He knows exactly that in this pawn chain, this bishop belongs to d3. Knight e7, f4. Greco rolls f4. Why? Because the pawn chain is pointing towards the king side, so he's preparing a future f5 in this pawn chain. That's correct. That's strategically sound. Also, now he wants to get knight f3 in without hindering that pawn. Knight f3, of course, Greco just continues development. And black castles into an attack. Another very typical and nice instructive chess crime from NN. Greco was maybe the first guy, right, who wrote the chess crime book. It feels like that because all of his opponents are committing instructive chess crimes. And that makes his manuscript so interesting, right? Castle short. Of course, black should have played the move h5 to cement the knight on f5 and stop white's pawn chain from rolling forward on the king's side. h5, yeah, Nimzovich, Capablanca kind of a move, of course, to cement the knight on f5 and hoping for the best because black is still having a terrible French bishop on c8 and white keeps the advantage even here, of course. But he castles short, oblivious to what's coming to him. And again, folks, please tell me whether g4 is a good move or not for white. Would you go g4 directly or would you do something else? Well, Greco does go g4 in this position, folks, and that's still a good move. Most of us will just castle short and play the move, but then maybe black will play h5 to make it more difficult, right? Maybe some g6 to follow. So Greco takes his time, opportunity to go g4 in this position, and he's kicking black's only strong piece from that spot, activating his bishop, but most importantly, getting ready for the f5 push. Now castle short and exchanging on his own terms. By the way, here bishop takes h7 was also winning, but who needs to calculate this? There is zero reason for white to calculate this line. Machine says white is still winning after this because you threaten mate in 1, but black can go g6, black can go knight g6. You have to calculate all these lines for white from this position. It doesn't even end there because there's rook h8 defense after queen g3. White is winning, but come on. This is not a human solution. Greco knows that after castling short, he has all the static advantages. f5 is coming next. The attack is raging on the king side. So why should I take any risks? He wants to play the position quietly without taking the risks. Okay? So takes. Black, after spending so much time with that knight, only traded off on f3 to activate white pieces even further. Please look at the black pieces. Terrible. And the king is not safe. Greco's attack is raging. How would you play with white, by the way, guys? Can you see a good looking idea for white in this position? Yes. Congratulations if you found Greco's move, queen h3. And by simply attacking that weakness, he's forcing a concession. He's forcing g6. And you see, that's a big concession because it allows Greco to play the next move. You tell me. f5. You see, the pawn chain was pointed towards the king side. And now finally, our major break is in. You see the connection? He already formed the entire plan by going f4 and then g4. He sees that f5 is coming and now the black king is facing enormous difficulties. That's how the game went. I will first show you the game continuation. He took on f5, took back. He took on f5 again. And Greco, do you capture this way or this way, folks? You're a great player if you found Greco's move, rook f5. Very simple. I want to get my rook into the attack. And if you take my rook, which happened in the game, by the way, after bishop takes f5, black resigned because black has no defense against a very simple move, queen takes h7 mate. The weakest point around the black king is h7 and Greco is pressing it with two pieces and black cannot bring reinforcements to defend that pawn, right? You see how logical the entire attack raged for white in this position? Like already from this position, it's just a beautiful, beautiful middle game. Understanding this play, there's like a connection between opening, middle game and the conclusion of this attack. It's far from coffee house chess, right? And also after f5, if you don't take on f5, if you play king h8, for example, you tell me, how should we build our attack with white in this position? Yes, fishbone pawn on f6 is created, and now there's a big threat of queen h6 and queen g7. If they go rook g8, you tell me, how do we bring reinforcements to our attack? Our attack needs more support. How do you bring more pieces to the attack? And yes, you're a great player, folks, if you found the move rook f3. Typical rook lift, and now slowly those ideas are taking shape. Well, if they go h5, it's already disastrous, right? If I take on h5, by the way, I give g5. I don't want to close down the files, right? But here, white is a very simple move, queen h4, followed by queen g5 and queen h6, and black cannot defend against those ideas. Plus, I can play rook h3, and can you tell me the finishing blow for white, folks? White to play and finish this game. You're a great player, if you found the entire sequence. Queen sacrifice followed by rook takes h5. And you see, the fishbone pawn is choking the black king. And it's just game over. Mate, right? So basically after rook h3, there is no defense and the game is over. And if you go all the way to this position after rook f3, let's look at the move queen b6 in this position. Can you please stop the video and tell me the quickest finish for white? The quickest way to finish this game. Checkmate patterns, folks. You have to know your mating patterns, and you're a great player if you found the queen sacrifice, queen takes h7, followed by rook h3 mate. That's how the attack evolves once you form the pawn chain, once you play f5, because if they don't take your pawn, then comes f6, and the rest is a beautiful finish. So first, you should know these patterns. First, you should see the attack to its conclusion like this, and then you can reverse engineer your way and you can understand the strength of such moves, right? You're understanding now the dangerous waiting black king by looking at those lines, and now you have better intuition about the strength of such moves, f5, right? Pieces are awakening, there's one more pawn join the attack, and this is of course a very universal pattern, right? Like your pawn chain is pointing towards the king side, so you should definitely play the f5 pawn break. It benefits white, and again we see it originates already in Greco's time. At least those games are recorded, so we know 100% sure that it goes all the way back to his time. And thank you, Greco, for leaving us with those beautiful instructive positions that I can give to my followers on YouTube to improve their chess game. I will leave you with the final homework position, folks. In this position, Greco was playing with white pieces, and he responded to the pawn move h6 with the push h4. Another very typical tactical idea. I'm sure you've seen this elsewhere before. And again, this was first introduced by Greco, this entire sacrifice idea. Okay, so please judge whether h takes g5 is a good move for black or not. How would you play this position with the black pieces? Should we take that knight? If you don't want to take that knight, what should black play? Is there a way for us to refute white's conception on the king's side? Okay? Isn't it sort of like, human evolution, also in some sense, like it all goes back in history, further times, like, like civilizations, evolution goes back in history, and even like the human evolution, we keep finding new evidence that sort of changes our beliefs of how far back in history everything is started, and some novelties are already introduced way before than we thought. Something like this is going on also with this book. He claims it goes all the way back in Greco's times, and those ideas were sort of reused by other masters. But Greco was, let's say, the originator, right? Because he sort of created those ideas. At least we saw them first time in Greco's games. And he gives great attribute to Greco. So much so is that he says he's like Plato, because, philosophy, usually we say everything is sort of a footnote to Plato. All the rest of philosophy can be interpreted as a single footnote to Plato, because he already envisioned everything important. He had ideas about everything important when it comes to philosophy. Well, maybe it will be far-fetched to claim Greco knew everything, all the chess patterns, but as we've seen in his fragments, in those 5 games, so many of nice ideas was already visible to Greco, and he was definitely not a random coffee house petzer, right? There was some vision in his games that was even backed up by modern times, right? Like I can use those in my lessons and so on. Hopefully you like this episode, folks, and I will probably give you more of such videos later on to track the history of chess and learn from the old masters, because I think it's very interesting to study the evolution of ideas in chess history, when it was originated, how does it evolve over time, how do masters influence each other, and how do we get to where we get today. And I will leave you with this book that was published after Greco died. They collected all of his fragments that he gave to his chess patrons, and they made a book out of it. I hope you liked this episode, folks. If you liked it, please give me a like and subscribe, and I will catch you on the next episode on some instructive chess masters to get better at chess. Thank you so much.